This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, great. So now I need a couple of inputs from your end, guys. Yesterday, what we did is that we created the infrastructure, and in the infrastructure, when I say I created a web app, plus I added a connection string to that web app, plus I added a SQL database out here. Right? These are the things basically that I did. Two, I took the code and deployed it onto the created infrastructure. Now, if I were to do the same thing, or if I were to approach the same thing using Azure DevOps, what all do I require here? Can anyone help me with this? What all should I require here? Anyone? Guys, I need inputs from your end.
Sir, can you come again?
Now, did you follow the yesterday's session?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I want to do the same thing using Azure DevOps, what all do I need now?
First, we need an infrastructure for in ARM
Okay.
template, sir. In ARM template.
Okay. Infrastructure. Let's write it down. Let's say infra ARM template. Okay. What else? Repository.
Afterwards, we have to create
Sorry.
one. Afterwards, we have to create one pipeline, and
Okay.
we
Pipeline.
have to. Hmm.
So you need a CI/CD, right?
Yes.
You need a CI/CD pipeline for this. But even before I go to a CI/CD, should I need a repository to hold my code?
Yes. Yes. Repository we need.
Right,
Yes.
repository, and we need a branch inside the repository.
Yes.
And let's say, I leave this here to y'all, but when you're doing it, I also need a branch policy to it. And I also need a Sonar Cube integrated inside the branch policy. Okay, so I need a repository. I need a CI and CD pipeline. I need the infrastructure. Now I'll come down to the ARM template in a while. We'll just first see how the infrastructure is created, and then basically first we'll see how the code is deployed, and then we'll see how the infrastructure is created using the ARM template, and we can integrate everything together. Now, I also said that this particular repository, right, like I have placed it as a public repository so that you all can go ahead and clone this code onto your local machine and go ahead and do all those operations out here. So I'll just again post this particular link here so that this will you will basically, or you can basically go ahead and use this particular code out here. And if I click on this code, it says solution file and etc. Great. But from the face of it,
Sir.
I can tell. Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, are we doing now by using YAML or again
No,
class
it's
editor?
classic. I mean, basically told what is YAML, so it is still classic.
Okay, sir. Okay, that's
Okay.
small doubt. Thank you.
Now, by the face of this, I can say that this is a .NET Core application because it has this files called appsetting.json and etc. If I were doing, let's say, an ASP.NET full framework, instead of appsetting.json file, you will see something known as a web.config file. You won't have a JSON file there. So it's an appsetting JSON file. So I understand that this is, let's say, a .NET Core application, and I have this repository here in this particular public repository. It's a public repository, but I want to do a private project. So what I'll do here is I'll have this repository open here. This is fine. So let's go to the repository back again. See this one. So this is the repository. I'm okay with this. It's a public repository. Now I'll just open dev.azure.com in another tab, and let's go to our ATM class project. And in here, I want to create a new repository. So I'll go here. and I'll say a new repository, and I'll say new repos, and it's asking for repository name and etc. So I'll say this is something like, or let's do one thing. Firstly, I'll go into the public repository right now. I'll say clone. Okay. Instead of now, if I need to take this repository from a public project, now this is a public project, guys. It's a public project. So I won't be able to create a CI/CD pipeline here because it's exposed to the public. So I want to create it in a private project. So the thing here I need to do is that I need to take all the code from this repository, which is public in nature, or this project that is public, and migrate it to this project, which is a private project, which is an ATM class project. We have a private project out here. So I want to migrate all the code to this particular project. So can anyone suggest me what is the best way to do this? Anyone, guys? I'm okay with the answer. I need the approach. So if you were here, you are in this particular repository, which is, let's say, a different project, which is my class repo. And here I'm in a different project. And this is a public repository. So what do I do in order to transfer my code from one project to the other? Anyone?
Share URL, sir.
Sorry?
Sharing URL.
Okay, sharing URL. Yes, I have a URL. Correct. But using that URL, how can I now migrate it to this particular project now? So if you were, let's say I have given you the, oh, fine. So I gave you the URL. So what do you do with it right now?
Actually, I too new for this work, but what I did is for in this
Mhm.
scenario, just
Okay.
I went to that program and I copied overall and I went
Okay.
to new
New
pipeline
project,
and
and then you
I
put
pasted
everything into
everything
that
and
repository. Mhm.
I did
Meaning
like
you
that.
did a
Actually,
clone
I am
to
first time doing that.
fine, but you did a clone, meaning you
Yeah, I
cloned
did a
your
clone.
code from this one, from this repository into your local machine. Then you
Hmm.
push that code to a new repository, right?
Yes.
So what I'll do right now is that I won't do that. I won't use my local machine. I'll just copy this link. So I hit in the public project, in the public repository, I said clone. I'll copy this link. I'll go into this private project, and instead of new repository, I'll say import repository. In here, I'll give the URL of the repository that I'm kind of playing around with. This is a public repository, so it doesn't require an authentication. And I'll say this is web app SQL connection, the name of a repository, and I'll say input. Now I am doing an import of one repository from a different project to a different repository in a different project. Now, even if you have a GitHub URL, or if you have, let's say, a Bitbucket URL, whichever URL it is, you can do this import. If it's a public, great. If it's a private, you need something known as authentication. You need an ID and a password to import this repository. This is how you go ahead and import a repository from one project to the other. Guys, is this clear? How did we do it?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
But
sir, clear.
can we can we import branches from there?
Yes, you will import everything. Like once you do an import, right? Whatever branches are there, you'll import everything here. Whatever is the setup, you'll import
Ah,
everything. This
that
had only a
only branches, sir, not the
no, you
repository.
cannot do it. When you do a import, you will import
Ah,
everything.
okay.
Okay. So you'll import all the branches. If you don't want something, you can go ahead and delete those out.
Ah, yes, sir. Okay.
Okay, so I am inside here. I said I have my project right now, and it has something like SQL connection strings and all that stuff. Now I'll just copy these SQL commands. Okay, I'll just say, okay, fine. This is my SQL command, create table, and I'll just open up a notepad. I'll place the SQL command here known as create table, something like this. And I will say, okay, fine. This is also the command that I need to use. That's it. These are a couple of commands basically that I need, and I need these to be executed. And on top of everything, I will just give one particular SQL statement out here. It's something like this. I'll tell you why am I giving this out also, and I'll say this is not products, this is something known as course. I'm saying drop this table if it exists, if it really exists out there. So firstly, please go ahead and see whether a table known as course exists. This won't be there when you're doing it for the first time, but for the second time it will be there. So it will drop the table and it will again create, meaning if you want to add new data here, right, you need to first drop the table and then you need to create the table and insert the data out here. So I'm just putting a file known as something like, I just have a notepad file with all my SQL commands, whatever that I want, and I'll say file save as, and I'll basically use, let's say, my download section here, and I'll save this file as commands dot SQL. I'll say all files and I'll say commands dot SQL. It's an SQL file that I'm saying. It's not a notepad file, it's an SQL file that I'm saving. And what I'll do right now is that I'll say okay, great, say don't save, just go back into my folder and I'll say okay, fine, please go ahead and add a new file, upload a file, or I can also go ahead and clone and do all that stuff, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm just simply uploading one particular file and this is called commands. Now do you see it's called a SQL query file because I saved it in a .sql. So I'll say open, I'll say commit. So I've committed this file into commands.sql. Now what I'll do is that I have my repository ready. So the first piece of, let's say, the puzzle is that taking a repository, this is done. Now I am leaving this to you all. Branching policy strategy is something that you'll have to add it and make it like a complete project. Now CI/CD pipelines. Now these are these are two things out here. One is a CI, the other is a CD. So let's talk about the CI first. And this is a .NET Core application. So I'll use a .NET Core template. So let's go into the pipeline. Let's say pipelines, and I'll say all pipelines. I'll say new pipeline, and I'll say use the classic editor. I'm still going with the classic now because I haven't explained what a YAML really is. And I'll say this is Webapp SQL connection, ATM class project main. I'll say continue, and I'll say this is ASP.NET Core. So just come down, and you have something known as an ASP.NET Core. I'll say apply. It says pipeline needs some attention. I'll say agent specification is something like Windows latest. I'm just taking the latest version of Windows out here, and I'm using the Azure DevOps pipeline out here. And for the CI pipeline name, I'll say it is SQL Web App CI pipeline. I'm just giving a logical name to it, and and it says okay, fine, this is the code. I'll say please don't target the CS project file because there is something known as, let's say, there is something known as the solution file here. So let me open that repository in a different tab. This is a public repository. I'm just closing this out. So I'm going to files. Say leave. Let's refresh this one more time. And inside this, inside the SQL app, I have something known as a solution file out here. So I'm just copying the path and I'm saying this is the path of, let's say, the solution file. So please go ahead and please use this path for, let's say, building the application. So this is the path where I want you to, kind of go ahead into and look into. And I got this path from here. It says main branch, and then this is the path it got on. I can also say, sorry, I can also do this. I can say whatever is a wildcard, I don't care. But please go ahead and look at this particular path for the solution file, and please get that particular solution file there and target this out. Tests, not a problem. I'll any which ways take this out because I don't have any test cases out here. And again, the source is okay. This is good enough. Agent job is also good enough. I'm not doing anything here. And I'm now saying that okay, fine. please restore whatever that you see here. So I'm doing a restoration. I'm doing a .NET restoration. I'm doing a .NET build, and I'm building this particular solution file. I'm doing a test. So you may or may not do a test. That's fine. That's up to you. If you want, let's say if you do not have test cases, you can also go ahead and integrate Sonar with this. So that's up to you. Publish, and I'll say, okay, fine. Remove this out. I'm not publishing this as a web project. And I'm saying this is the output directory, which is build.artifact staging directory. I'm saying please use that A folder in order to, let's say, build this particular, in order to, let's say, publish this files here. And I say great. And finally, publish artifacts. Guys, do I need anything else apart from this? Can anyone think of anything else apart from this? Apart from these steps, do I need to add anything else? Anyone? Are we good with these steps? And is everyone able to follow what we are doing here? Anyone who's not able to follow what we're doing here? Can I go ahead and run my pipeline, guys? Is this okay? Any other steps that I need to add?
Sona.
Okay, Sonar is something that I'm leaving it to y'all. You have to add that. Anything else? I have added something known as a SQL commands file, right? This is something that I'll be using in my pipelines that is coming later. Should I not copy this out in my build pipeline? Should I not do a copy task here? Guys,
Yes,
anyone?
yes,
Yes, no, maybe.
yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
let's do a copy files. I'm saying add this out, and I'm saying copy files to, let's say, build.artifact staging directory. I'm just using this out, and I'm saying please copy the files to build.artifact staging directory. And I'm saying the source is this. This is the source file that you want to add. I'll say okay. So this is SQL connection strings dot command dot SQL, and this is the only basically, or let's say I can just take this out, and I'll say this is commands dot SQL, and finally I'll say okay, fine, save and queue. So I'm doing a build pipeline right now, wherein I'm saying okay, fine. Sorry, wherein I'm saying please go ahead and give me just this particular build, and while you're building the code, please also go ahead and copy this file called SQL, because this is something that I have written. This is something that I have written and placed in my repository. So please go ahead inside this particular folder known as SQL local connection strings and get me that particular file. Now it's doing a build and restore procedure. So let's wait for a second for this build and restore to get completed, and let's see how this looks like. Guys, is everyone following the pipeline? Does anyone have any questions here that what we are doing in this pipeline, how we are doing this pipeline, and etc.?
Yes, Kiran, it's parallelly creating database, and on the top of the database, you're creating tables and inserting the data, right?
Correct, inserting the data, but I didn't go to the infrastructure yet. I'm just doing a build pipeline. So whatever code that I have, I'm just building my code. That's it. I'm just getting my code ready. I haven't released my code. Release pipeline is the one which should basically go ahead and create me the databases, the web apps, and etc.
Okay, fine, fine, fine.
Okay.
Sir, if we want to
Yeah.
release the pipeline,
Mhm.
we must need service connection, or with service connection no need. I
We
have
will
that
need
doubt.
a service connection. We will need a service connection. We will definitely need a service connection, and I also don't have a service connection with this particular new portal. So I'm using a new portal, so I don't have a service connection. So I'll explain how to create the service connection once again.
Sir, and one more doubt, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Uh, Sir, actually, I am a reader.
Okay.
I can able to create that service connection, or I can get that service connection.
So you are a reader in that particular subscription, is it?
Yes, 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 sir.
You won't be able to create the service connection. You need to get that service connection from an owner.
Owner. Okay, sir.
Yes.
What are the other roles can know that, sir? Then
Contributor.
like contributor also can
Contributor on
know
a
that.
subscription. Yes.
Okay, so thank you, sir. Thank you for this.
Now it says there's one artifact published, and let's see what does the artifact looks like. So I have a sql.zip and I have commands.sql. These are the two things out here that I have published out here. Now what I'll do is, for the ease of convenience, I'll just go ahead and manually create my infrastructure for now. I'll also give you the template. I'll also tell you how to create it using the template. But right now I'll say it is dev.rg. I'll say this is central US or something like that. I'll say review and create. I'll say create. So I'm just creating a resource group and I'm preparing my infrastructure. I'm just preparing my infrastructure so that the code can be released on top of it. And in here, I'll say create, and I say, okay, fine, create a web app. And when we saw yesterday, right, we went ahead and we created the web app and then the SQL, then connected both of them. You have directly something in the SQL plus database experience. So I'm creating a web app and also database and also attaching both of them. So I'll say, okay, fine, this is the resource group that I want you to create it in. I'll say this is a dev web app ABC US, Central US. And I'll say the runtime stack is a .NET Core. And I'll say, okay, fine, the engine is a SQL Azure. Like, it's not a Postgres SQL, it's a SQL Azure. Then I'm saying, okay, fine, the database name is a testDB. And I'll say, okay, fine, great. A review and create this out. So I'm creating both the web application and a SQL database, and I'm connecting both of them together using this particular portal. So I'm saying, okay, fine, before I, okay, say it says, okay, fine, the tracking ID is invalid. Let's see why this is. It says, okay, fine, premium is not available. Yes, premium will not be available in this particular free trial subscription. So let's see. Okay, since I'm using a free trial, it doesn't have a premium. So what I'll do is I'll individually create the web app and the SQL server and then attach them, both of them. Because in free trial, I don't think you will be able to do this. So let's go ahead, create a web app individually. So I'll say dev RG. I'll say this is dev web application or dev SQL ABC000 CUS. Runtime stack, sorry, runtime stack is a 3.1. It's central US, great, not a problem. I'll say this is a dev plan. Monitoring, and I'll disable the monitoring for now. And I'll say review and create. And once this is getting created, I will also go ahead and create my SQL database. So I'm just doing a review create here. And finally, I'll go ahead and create my SQL database out here. So I'll say SQL databases, and I'll create my SQL database in the same region to just keep things in a simple way. Let's say dev RG. Let's say the database name is dev SQL DB CUS, something like this. And there is no server. Let's do this test DB, and let's create a server, and let's create the name of the server here. I'll say it is dev SQL SCR server CUS Central US. Location is Central US again. And I'll say SQL authentication. And very importantly, I'm giving the test user and the password here. So I'm giving the ID and the password here, saying OK. And as we did yesterday, I'll say this is a basic size. I'm okay with the basic workload. I don't need a standard. I'm good with basic, and I'll say apply. and locally redundant backup storage. I'm good with this. Finally, networking. I need the public endpoint to access this out. I need to allow Azure services, and I need to add my IP here. And I'll say, okay, fine, all this is great. And I'll say review and create. I'll say create. So I am having the infrastructure out here. Now in the next iteration, let's see how we can also automate the infrastructure. So as of now, I'm just trying to make sure that the code deployment is automated. But in the next, again, let's say once you visit this in the next time, I also want to see how can I use ARM templates in order to create this out and also deploy the same thing using the ARM template. And we need to discuss about a couple of more concepts here. So that's the reason I'm putting it on a hold. So I'm creating the infrastructure. I have my code pipeline ready. The code pipeline is producing all the artifacts that I need right now. This is all great. Now I need to create a release pipeline. And even before I create a release pipeline, I need a service connection with this particular portal. It's a new portal, so I do not have a service connection with it. So let me go ahead and establish a service connection real quick. So I'll say new service connection. I'll say again Azure Resource Manager. I'll say next. I'll say service principal manual. Next. Azure Cloud. And it's a subscription ID. So let me just go here into the Azure Active Directory and firstly go ahead and create the app registration. So Active Directory, and I'll say okay, fine. Scroll down and I'll say app registrations, and I will add an app registration, guys. So I'm establishing a service connection between the Azure portal and the Azure DevOps. I'm saying this is DevOps service connection, SVC, which is service connection. I'll say register, and I will also need to make sure that the service connection has a particular permission on this particular subscription, right? So I'll also go ahead and add, let's say, this particular application ID or this particular DevOps SVC into the IAM of the subscription, that as we did yesterday, as we did, let's say, when we're creating the service connection out. For now, I'll just select the subscription ID. I'll say this is the subscription ID. So I don't have the subscription ID here, not a problem. I'll say subscription name is a free trail. And I'll say service principal ID. I have a service principal ID, so I'll go here. I'll take the client ID here and I'll place it here. And it's asking me for a service principal key. So I'll say great, I need a service principal key as well. So clients and secrets, create a new secret. I'll say DevOps, I'll say add. I'm copying this value for the secret here, going into the portal. I'll add the service principal key and also make sure to save this in a notepad so that I can use it at a later point in time. So I'm saving this in a portal. And then it's asking me for the tenant ID. Going back, I'll get the tenant ID from the OU page. So this is the tenant ID. I'm taking the tenant ID here, copying it here. And finally, I'll say the service connection name is, I'll say class DevOps is the name of the subscription underscore SVC service connection. I'll say grant access to all pipelines. One final thing that I haven't given yet is a subscription ID. So let me go ahead and grab the subscription ID here. So I'll go into the subscriptions, and this is the subscription ID that I do have. So I'll just copy the subscription ID here, go into the service connection, give the subscription ID, and finally assign an identity and access management. So I'm going into IAM, saying add, say add a role assignment, and it says okay, fine, I'll give it an owner role, not a problem. And I'll say next. I'll say members, and I'll say okay, fine, that is DevOps SVC. This is the app registration that I've created. Select this out, review, and assign this out. So I'm assigning a role assignment to it. So I've created a service connection. I created a service principal into the app registration. I've created a secret. I've taken all the details here and I put it here, let's say into, let's say, this particular service connection creation wizard. And now I'll say verify and save. And it is saved, and this is what it is. It's class DevOps underscore SVC this is the service connection that I'll be using going forward. So I went ahead, created the service connection out here. Now finally, I have the infrastructure also. I have I have the service connection. I have everything that I need. So let's go into dev rg. I have the service plan. I have the web app. I have the server. I have the test DB. Guys, am I missing anything in the infrastructure now? Do I need to do anything else in the infrastructure here? I have created the infrastructure that is required. Do I need to do anything else here? Anyone?
No.
Okay, am I good? Guys, does anyone feel that I'm missing on anything? Or shall we proceed? Guys, anyone? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes, sir. Yes, we can proceed.
Okay, so let's go ahead and proceed with this. But please don't blame me if it fails later, okay? We certainly are missing something. So if someone can fill me in with what we are missing in, it'll be a great help. We definitely are missing something. Anyone? Anyone, guys? Guys, I'm expecting some inputs from you all because this is the 51st class that we are like kind of interacting with. So I need some inputs from your end. Guys, anyone, anything? Guys, anyone, anything?
Connection to the
Between
SQL and
what?
web app. SQL and
Exactly.
web
How do you connect the SQL and web app?
connection strings.
Connection strings. I haven't given the connection strings yet. So how will my code work? It won't, right? I
Oh,
need to provide something known as connection strings. Guys, where should I provide a connection string? Can anyone else tell that? Where should I?
configurations.
Okay. And where in configurations?
Connection strings.
Where do I get the connection string from?
You get from SQL Server overview
SQL
page.
Server, right? So let's go into the SQL Server. Is it from the SQL Server or is it from the SQL database that I get a connection string from?
SQL database.
So let's go into SQL databases and let's take the connection string out here. So I'll say show database connection strings. Copy this connection string out here. And I need to basically replace the connection string with what? The password.
Password.
So I'm replacing my connection string with the password. I'm saying Control C. I'll go into, let's say, this particular name and I'll say SQL connection because this is what the code is really expecting. So I'm putting a SQL connection here and I'm finally changing this as SQL Azure. And I'll say, okay, save this out, continue, and just restart my application. So application is restarted. I can now go to DevOps. I can say release pipelines. And I have a couple of pipelines here. Now I'll go ahead and add a new pipeline here. And now I'll give the name of the pipeline as SQL application release, something like this. So I'll say SQL application release. And I'll say add an artifact. And I'll use the build pipeline to add the artifact. and I'll use this particular build pipeline that I just created, which is SQL Webapp CI pipeline. I'll use the latest version. I'll say add, and I'll just name this as a dev stage. And now the question for you all guys is that what is the step that I need to add here? What are all the steps that I need to add here? Anyone? Anyone guys? What are the
Azure
steps that I
SQL.
need to add here?
App service
Sorry.
Azure
deploy.
SQL.
Yes, Azure SQL. No, the first thing is that no, there are two things out here. That's correct. There are two things out
Azure
here.
SQL.
Hmm. Yeah, please go ahead.
Azure SQL database deployment.
Okay, Azure SQL database deployment. But I already have a database. I already have created a database. I don't need a database deployment. I need something known as
App service
yes,
deploy.
yes,
Service
app service
deployment first.
deploy. Yes, app service deploy is the second one. It's not the first
Yes,
one.
yes.
So second is in the app service deploy.
App service deployment. Yes.
But before I deploy my application service, sorry, before I deploy the code onto my application service, I need to make sure to update the database with the tables, right? Update the DB with tables. And I have a SQL script with me. I have a .sql file with me. So this is the .sql file I'll be using. How do I use this? I'll say add. I'll say Azure SQL. It says Azure SQL database deployment, which was right. I'll say add this out. It says it needs some attention. It says the subscription. I'll select the class DevOps SVC. And it says, okay, file. How do you want to authenticate it? It has a couple of things using connection strings or whatever it is. I'll say SQL Server authentication. And it says, what is the name of your SQL Server? So let me go here, grab the name of my SQL Server. So this is a server name, which is dev sql cus.databases.windows.net. Adding the SQL Server name, saying what is the name of your database. It's a test DB. Taking the test DB name here. Saying login and password. What should be the login and password here, guys? Can anyone help me with this?
Test user.
Test user. And the password
And
is what? It was
Microsoft test.
Microsoft-001. But can I give my password like this? Because right now, when I give my password like this, anyone, any part of the world, if they have access to the pipeline, they'll be able to see this password, right? This is sensitive information. So it is not suggested for me to give the password like this. So what I'll do is I'll just cut the password, go into
Variable.
the variables, add a variable.
Variable.
I'll say password.
Pass.
I'll place the password here
And put a lock
and
over
I
there.
will lock. Yes, I will just lock this out. I'll just lock my password out. And how do I
Here we
call
need
my
to use
password?
Key Vault as well, right? Parallel? Key
I'm
Vault
sorry.
also you can use, right? Key Vault
We
also you can use parallel, right?
we can use it. I'll tell you how to use it.
Okay, okay, fine.
Now, how do I call my password here? I have placed a variable called as password. Now, how do I use it here, guys? Anyone?
Parameters.
How do I do that?
Dollar open
Dollar, open and close
pass.
parenthesis, and then password.
Huh.
And here it's saying what is the file that you want to go ahead and deploy. I'll say it is not a DAC but it's a SQL script file that I do have. I'll say this is the SQL script file. I just clicked on, let's say, the link artifact, drop, and this is commands.sql that I do have. I'll say add this out. That's it. This is how I'm doing my SQL deployment. And after the SQL deployment, finally I'll do Azure App Service Deploy. So I'll say Azure Web App or Azure App Service Deploy. This is the one that I need to add. I'll say, okay, fine, this is great. Azure Resource Manager connection. And I'll say SVC. It is an application running on Windows. I'll say this is the only application that I do have. And I'll say, okay, fine. Please go ahead and select this particular zip file. That's it. Let me save this out and let me put this into a folder known as SQL Web App. And let's go ahead and create a release right now. Let's see what is the agent that I'm using here. Let's go for Windows latest. And finally, I'll say create a release. I'm creating a release into the development environment. So let's wait for a minute until it grabs the agent and until it starts the job, and let's see what it does. So it is grabbed the agent. It's saying, okay, fine, this is Windows Server 2019. And the very first thing it'll do, it's basically going ahead and downloading all the artifacts here. Finally, it's going into the Azure SQL task, and it's trying to get a connection with, let's say, that particular SQL server that we have created, let's say, on the Azure portal by using something known as a username. So if I expand this, it's trying to get a connection with, let's say, that particular Azure SQL, and it said, okay, fine, I got the connection, and I've also, let's say, went ahead and invoked that particular SQL script. So it's saying, okay, fine, this is the input file that I got, just command.sql. I went ahead and updated the database out there. Second, or the third thing it's doing, it's trying to get a connection with, let's say, this particular application which is called dev sql abc000cus, and it is then trying to basically say, okay, fine, I'll deploy this particular app service out here. So I'll deploy the code into the app service out here. It's doing this, and let's see what it does after this one. So this is how I am going ahead and deploying the data into the SQL database. So I have not connected to the SQL database today. I'm not doing that. I'm not connected to the SQL database today. I have not run these scripts manually, but I'm using an Azure DevOps pipeline in order to run this out. The biggest advantage of this is that I have logs for everything. I have a proper logging for everything. If it fails, whatever I have run and everything, I have now a point of authority that, okay, fine, I'm using the Azure DevOps pipeline in order to update these things out. So let's verify if, let's say, if it's updated everything. So I'll just copy the SQL database, or I don't even need to go to SSMS. I'll go to the query editor and I'll say Microsoft-001. Once I log into the database, I'll see whether that particular table is there or not. So I'll say select star from dbo.course, and I have this that is getting displayed. So the data is injected using the pipeline. Let's go back to our application and browse our application to see whether we are getting the data on the front end, or we are getting an error or whatever it is. So let's try doing this out. So since it's the first time this is getting loaded, it'll take some time in order to boot and etc. So let's see what happens out here. So any questions till here, guys? Anything till here on why, how we did it, what we did it, and etc. Anyone? Any questions? Now the idea behind this, now it'll take some time in order to load. It's trying to hit the database, and if it doesn't load, we'll have to troubleshoot on why it's not loading and all that stuff. But normally it's a free application, so it'll take in let's say it'll just take a bit more time than, let's say, the normal load times out here. Now this is good enough. I've deployed the code and I've done all these things out. This is good enough, but I am still not creating my application, or I'm still not creating my infrastructure using the ARM templates. Now how do I do that? Using what do I do that? What how do I write my ARM template is something I will give you as an assignment. Now this should be my ARM template, or this should be the structure of my ARM template. The first thing it should create is a SQL server. The second it should create is a SQL database. The third thing it should create is an app service plan. Fourth, it should create it's a web app with a connection string to the SQL. These are the components what it should create. And I want, let's say, a template that I want you all to write it out. So how do you write it? Whether you, let's say, grab the template, let's say from online, whatever it is, I'm okay with it. But I want you all to write this template out, and I'll update this template in this particular project. Now we have a couple of projects, right? So let's go into our DevOps project out here, which is my class repo. I'll update this. I'll give a new. I'll let's say there is a folder for automation. Inside this, there are ARM templates and etc. Let's see if the template is already there. So I have a web app SQL template already in place. You can use this template as a baseline, provided you are not getting it. Provided you are not basically understanding how to write a template, but I expect you all to first write this template, then use this to understand how the template is being written. Okay. Please do this and make sure that your pipeline consists of so many things. Now, a lot of things is something that I'll basically put at your end, guys. A lot of things basically is something that I'll now give as an assignment. So your pipeline should have a CI, and that CI should also have Sonar integrated. So test cases should be there. Your pipeline should copy, let's say, the SQL scripts, which we are doing in which ways, and also it should copy the ARM templates. Now the CD pipeline, which is a release pipeline, should first do an ARM template deployment, create all the infrastructure, and then you need the Azure SQL. Azure SQL task basically coming in, deploying the database, and then you need, let's say, the Azure web app deploy. This should be the end-to-end pipeline, or this is what we need to achieve. And this is the assignment, guys, and we meet on a Sunday. Now we have a class on Sunday, this Sunday. So when we meet on a Sunday, please try to explain how did you create it, whether you got it, whether you got an error, it's okay. Even if you're getting an error like this, now we got the service basically up and running. Now it's an F1 tier. That's the reason it took some time, but if you create it in S1 or something like that, it will load more faster. Now, even if I change this file, now the best practice that I've implemented here is that even if I basically go ahead and add, let's say, some data into it, or drop a data into it, and then run my pipeline back again, I will see that data to be injected inside the database. So this is how is the best practice what I'm implementing out here. So what I want you all to do is, yes, this is good, but I also want the infrastructure to be created using the ARM template. And we'll introduce something known as an Azure Key Vault. What is the advantage of a Key Vault and etc. We'll also look into that. Guys, is this assignment okay with you all? So you have everything that you need. You have the template, you have the video, you have the code also, and I've also told you all how to import the repository. So please try importing the repository, and please try deploying this template out. Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding the assignment that we have right now? Does anyone have any questions, guys, with this one?
So
Anyone,
not
anything?
this one. So not
Yeah,
this one.
please.
Previous session, like when we are creating service connection, right?
Hmm.
At that time, I'm getting error like I'll. It's a WVC error. It's kind of a WVC.
Okay. Can you send me that screenshot once to so that I can understand what the error that you're getting?
Yes, sir. I'll send.
Okay, please do send the screenshot. I'll look into that.
Okay.
Guys, so on Monday, can I expect this out? Can you all try this out? I don't need, let's say, an end-to-end solution. Even if you're not getting it right, I'm okay with that. But can you all just try this out? Because this is how it's going to be in the real-time environment, guys. They're going to say, okay, fine, this is what I need. This is the requirement. please use any of the language that you need. You need Terraform, please go ahead with that. PowerShell, please go ahead with that. ARM, I'm good with that. But please make sure that my pipeline has all these components that I need it to be tested. I need it basically to be end to end, and I need the CI/CD triggers to be enabled. So can you try this, guys? Can you all please try this out and let me know if you have any questions here? Okay, please try this out, guys. If possible, please try to work in teams. Please divide yourselves in teams and just try to work this out. And we'll discuss more on Sunday. Now we have a class on Sunday, same time, it's an online class, and we'll discuss more on that. And we'll need to basically, I'll explain how do you basically do an ARM template also. But please make sure to just try this out and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, any questions that I can take for today, guys? Okay, I mean,
Kiran,
yeah, please go ahead.
in that boards actually,
Mm-hmm.
boards means Azure in DevOps engineer. We work on it or any other person.
So normally these are the Scrum boards to track your work and work items and etc. So this is used by all the teams, like the QAs or the developers, even the DevOps use this out.
Okay. I mean, we as in engineers, we also do it. We also work
Yes,
on
we
it.
also do it. Yes. Any more? Anything else, guys? Okay, if there are no further questions, then we're good to close the session, guys. Please try this out. And yes, I did look into that error. Can you please send me the screenshot for this particular thing? Like you sent a message, but can you please send a screenshot to my mobile number so that I can look at that?
Okay, sir. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you so much, guys, and have a great day ahead. We'll meet on Sunday and we'll discuss more on this. Thank you, guys.